Good morning, students. As you all know that your pre-midterm exam is from 17th of August, and please download your timetable from your school website. Students, today I am going to read the lesson that is going to come in your exam, lesson 1.1 and lesson 1.2. Today I'll read these two lessons as the questions you will be getting is from between the lesson. Please listen it carefully. So here, lesson 1.1, the Kabuliwala. My 5-year-old daughter, Minnie, cannot live without chattering. I really believe that in all her life, she has not wasted a minute in silence. Her mother would often tell her to stop her prattle, but I would not. One morning, I was working on my new novel. Minnie stole into my room, put her hand on mine, and said, "Father, Ramdayal the gatekeeper calls a crow a carrow. He doesn't know anything, does he?" Before I could explain this to her, she jumped to another subject. "Father," she said, "Bhola says there is an elephant in the clouds. It blows water out of its trunk, and that is why it's rain." While I sat thinking of some reply, she put another question. "Father, what relation is mother to you?" But then she heard something down in the street. At once she ran to the window crying, "A Kabuliwala, Kabuliwala." Sure enough, in the street below was a Kabuliwala passing slowly along. He wore the loose clothing of his people with a big turban. There was a bag on his back, and in his hand he carried boxes of grapes. The Kabuliwala turned and looked up at the child, overcome by terror. Minnie fled to her mother for protection. She had a blind belief that inside the big man's bag there were 2 or 3 other children like herself. But meanwhile, the peddler came in and greeted me with a smile. I made some small purchases. Then I had a little conversation with him about his country. As he was about to leave, he asked, "Where is the little girl, sir?" Thinking that Minnie must get rid of her false fear, I had her brought out. She stood by my chair, looking at the Kabuliwala and his bag. He offered her nuts and raisins, but she was not tempted. She clung close to me. This was their first meeting. One morning, not many days later, I had to go somewhere. As I was leaving the house, I was startled to find Minnie laughing and talking with the great Kabuliwala. She was seated on a bench and the Kabuliwala was sitting at her feet. Minnie had never found so patient a listener all her life. The corner of her little sari was already stuffed with almonds and raisins. "Why did you give her those?" I said. I took out a coin and handed it to him. On my return an hour later, I found that the coin had created a lot of trouble. The Kabuliwala had given it to Minnie, and her mother was shouting, "Where did you get this coin?" "The Kabuliwala gave it to me," said Minnie cheerfully. "The Kabuliwala gave it to you?" cried her mother, much shocked. Luckily for Minnie, I entered just then and saved her from any thrashing. Later I came to know that it was not the first or second time the two had met. The Kabuliwala had overcome the child's fears by a bribery of nuts and almonds. The two had become great friends and had many common jokes. For example, Minnie would say, "Oh Kabuliwala, what have you got in your bag?" And he would reply, "An elephant." Not much cause for merriment, perhaps, but how both of them enjoyed the joke. Then the Kabuliwala would take his turn and say, "Well, little one, when are you going to the father-in-law's house?" Minnie was yet only a little child. She had no idea of what a father-in-law is, but she would not show her ignorance. With ready tact, she would say, "Are you going there?" Among men of the Kabuliwala's class, the words father-in-law's house have a double meaning. They are another name for jail, a place where we are well cared for at no expense to ourselves. The Kabuliwala would take Minnie's question in this sense. He would shake his fist at the invisible policeman and say, "I will thrash my father-in-law." At this, Minnie would go into peals of laughter, in which her friend would also join. Minnie's mother was full of doubts about the Kabuliwala. Often she would beg me to keep an eye on the tall big man. I would try to laugh her fear away, but then she would say seriously, "Were the children never kidnapped?" In spite of all my explanations and assurances, her fears persisted. But I didn't think it right to forbid the man from coming to our house, and the intimacy went on unchecked. Once a year in the middle of January, Rahman the Kabuliwala would return to this country. Then he would be very busy going from house to house collecting his debts. This year, however, he always found time to come and see Minnie. If he could not come in the morning, he would appear in the evening. One morning, I was reading a book in my study. It was about 8 o'clock, and the weather was chilly. All at once, I heard an uproar in the street. When I looked out, I saw Rahman being led away by two policemen. Behind them was a crowd of curious boys. There were blood stains on the clothes of the Kabuliwala, and one of the policemen carried a knife. Hurrying out, I stopped them and inquired what it all meant. Partly from one, partly from another, I gathered that a certain neighbor had owed the peddler some money for a Rampuri shawl, but had falsely denied having bought it. In the course of heated argument, Rahman had struck the man with his knife. He was now calling his enemy all sorts of names. Suddenly, in the veranda of my house appeared my little Minnie. As usual, she exclaimed, "Oh Kabuliwala, Kabuliwala." Rahman's face lit up as he turned to her. He had no bag under his arm today, so she could not discuss the elephant with him. She at once proceeded to the next question. "Are you going to the father-in-law's house?" Rahman laughed and said, "Just there I am going, little one." Then, seeing that the reply had not amused the child, he held up his changed hands and said, "I would have thrashed this old father-in-law, but my hands are bound." Rahman was sentenced to some years' imprisonment. Time passed by and he was not remembered, even our little Minnie. I am ashamed to say, forgot her old friend. New companions filled her life as she grew older. She spent more of her time with the girls of her age. Years had passed. It was the day of Minnie's marriage. Since early dawn, the wedding pipes had been sounding. I was sitting in my study looking through the accounts. Suddenly, someone entered and saluted respectfully. It was Rahman, the Kabuliwala. At first, I did not recognize him, but I knew him again when he smiled. How are you, Rahman? I said. When did you come? I was let out of prison yesterday evening, he replied. The words struck harsh upon my ears. I thought his coming was not a good omen, because it was the day of Minnie's marriage. There are ceremonies going on and I am busy, I said. Could you come another day? At once he turned to go, but as he reached the door, he turned and said, May I not see the little one, sir, for a moment? It was his belief that Minnie was still the same. In memory of former days, he had brought for her a few almonds, raisins, and grapes. He had wrapped them up carefully in a piece of paper. There is a ceremony in the house, I said again. You won't be able to see anyone today. At this, the man's face fell and he went out. I felt a little sorry. I was going to call him back, but he was returning of his own accord. He came close up to me and said, Sir, I brought these few things for the little one. Will you give them to her? I took them and was going to pay him. But he caught my hand and said, Kind sir, don't offer me any money. I too have a daughter like her in my home. I think of her and bring fruits for your child, not to make any profit. Saying this, he took out from his pocket a small piece of paper. With great care, he smoothed it out on my table. It bore the impression of a little hand, the impression of an ink-smeared hand laid flat on the paper. Tears came to my eyes. I sent for Minnie immediately. Many objections were raised, but I would not listen. Minnie came and stood bashfully before me. She was clad in the red silk of her wedding day. So here students, we have completed the reading of lesson 1.1. Now let's start reading of lesson 1.2. So your lesson 1.2 is Christmas gift. $1.87. 3 times Della counted it. $1.87. And the next day was Christmas. For months, Della had been saving every penny she could. She had been planning to buy some nice Christmas present for her husband, her Jim, whom she loved more than her life. Jim earned only $20 a week. Out of it, $8 went for the rent of their flat. With the remaining $12, the family could hardly make both ends meet. It was Christmas Eve. Poor Della did not know how she could get a good present for her Jim. She flopped down on the little couch and began to cry. Then suddenly she got up and stood before the mirror. A brilliant shine came in her eyes. Rapidly she pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. The family had 2 possessions in which both Jim and Della took great pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's, and the other was Della's hair. It reached below her knees and looked like a rippling cascade of brown water. Quickly, Della did her hair up again and ran down the stairs. Very soon, she reached the market, and where she stopped, the sign read, "Hair goods of all kinds." Della stepped in and asked, "Will you buy my hair?" "Take your hat off and let me have a look at it," said the lady in the shop. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said the woman. "Give it to me quick," said Della. Now Della went from store to store looking for Jim's present. She found it at last. It was a platinum chain, simple in design but beautiful. As soon as she saw it, she decided Jim must have it for his gold watch. Jim had never liked the old leather strap on his watch. Della got the chain for $21 and hurried home with the remaining 87 cents. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas. Within 40 minutes, her head was covered with tiny curls. She stood before the mirror and looked at herself. With her curls, she looked like a naughty boy. At 8 o'clock, the coffee was made and the frying pan was ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della took the platinum chain in her hand and stood near the door. Soon she heard Jim's steps on the stairs below. She turned white in fear and prayed, "Please God, make him think I'm still pretty." The door opened and Jim stepped in. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and was already burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door. His eyes became fixed upon Della. It seemed as if he had turned into a statue. "Jim, darling," she said, "don't look at me like that. I had my hair cut off because I couldn't leave without giving you a Christmas present. You don't know what a nice gift I have got for you. Now say Merry Christmas." "Your hair is gone. Sold and gone it went for you, boy. Don't you like me just as well? I am me without my hair. Ain't I?" Jim seemed to wake up as if from a dream. He drew a packet from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. "Dell dear," he said, "your haircut won't make me love you any less. But if you unwrap that packet, you will see why I was lost a while at first." Della at once tore open the packet. A scream of joy came, but it quickly changed into tears. For there lay a set of combs which Della had worshipped for many months in a shop window. They were expensive combs, she knew. Her heart had always longed for them, but with no hope of possession, and now they were hers, but the tresses that should have adorned them were gone. Della kissed the combs, smiled through her tears, and said, "My hair grows so fast, Jim." Jim had not yet seen his present. Della held it out to him on her open palm and said, "Isn't it lovely, Jim? I hunted all over the town to find it. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it." Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch. He smiled a little and said, Dell, let's put our Christmas presents away for a while. They are too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get money for your comms. And now, will you put the chops on? So, here, students, we have completed the second lesson reading, that is lesson 1.2, and lesson 1.3 and poem 1.4 you will get in the next video. Please listen it carefully and read it carefully. Thank you.